Today is May 31st, 2024. I'm Gabriele Fellows with the Museums of Lake County, and this is an oral history interview with Maureen Carpenter. Maureen, thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So to get started, what can you tell us about your name? Were you named after anyone?
I was named after Maureen O'Hara, the red-headed Irish actress that my mother loved.
Oh, okay. And what is your date of birth and how old are you?
October 7th, 1946, which makes me 77.
And where were you born and raised?
I was born in San Francisco, St. Joseph's Hospital, but at age 3, my whole family moved up to Lakeport, as my dad had a sister living here and a brother living here.
And what were your parents' names?
George and Mary Garcia.
Do you have any siblings?
I have one sister, Georgiana.
And what does she do?
She's a retired nurse.
Oh, okay. And where did your ancestors migrate from?
On my father's side, his family came from the island of Pico in the Azores. And on my mother's side, she came from Chicago, but originally Irish background.
And talk about some of your ancestors that you know about.
I know of my grandfather. I never met him. He was dead before I was born. But he came from the island of Pico on a whaling ship and landed in New York, and then somehow took the train to California, where he had older brothers already living in the San Leandro area, and he ended up in the city of Visalia, where he married a little Portuguese girl from the island of Terceira, and they had 5 children, one of which was my dad.
And describe the neighborhood or community you grew up in.
I grew up on the hill called Lupiuma Heights. There was only like 3 or 4 houses up there. And we moved there because my dad loved the view of the lake. And so he built a house there, and both my sister and I were raised in that house.
And what did your father do for a living?
He came up here, he was a Navy pilot and worked for Pan Am, and he came up here after he got his teaching credential and taught math at Clearlake Union High.
And did your mom work outside the home?
No.
Tell me about your parents.
My mom won a beauty contest when she was 17. She was going to a convent school and just applied for this contest, and she won it, and the winner got to have a free trip on the train to Hollywood and try out for some kind of contract. So my mom by herself jumped in the train, went to Hollywood, got a place to stay at the Studio Club, which is where young unmarried girls could get a room, kind of like the YMCA. And she lived there and was signed on. She was a dancer for Busby Berkeley. She was in John Wayne's Big Trail movie. She knew John Wayne really well.
Oh, wow.
She later became Carole Lombard's double. So she was the back of Carole Lombard in a lot of movies.
Whoa.
Yeah, so she was a hoot. Clark Gable went after her once, and she told him no, and that was that. And Clark kind of protected her from other various sundry Hollywood people. But she was very beautiful.
Tell me more about your dad.
My dad was born in Visalia, the youngest baby of 5. He went to Annapolis, wanted to be a Navy man, and he lost his hearing because his mom had scarlet fever when he was in the womb. And so later on, as he got older, he lost hearing. And so the Navy retired him. And then when World War II came along, they came back, and his hearing was good enough. And so he became a commander in the Pacific within airplanes, flying off of carriers.
And what are some of your earliest childhood memories?
I remember living in Park Merced, which is a big housing community by San Francisco State. I remember living there and having lots of fun, and everybody's house was like everybody else's house. And then when we moved to Lakeport, we lived on 9th Street, and it was a joy because there were so many kids on that street that we just played constantly outside with different people all along 9th Street. It was great fun growing up there.
And what stories have been passed down in your family?
Wow. My mother said absolutely nothing. She never talked about her mother. She never talked about her father. She had one sister, and she knew of one boy that was born but died. But my cousins have revealed that she had at least 6 children that never lived to, 10 or 11. They all died really young. So my mother never said a word, never told us anything like that. So she was pretty closed-mouthed about. She talked about Hollywood. She enjoyed talking about her Hollywood days, but pretty closed-mouthed about anything. And my dad was the same thing. When you're a foreigner coming to a new country, you just want to learn English and forget about the old world. You want to be an American, and you want to be, part of the community and fit in. And so they didn't know any Portuguese. Nobody taught them anything. Grandpa never knew anything but Portuguese. But the kids were never taught that, and just said, "You're an American. You're an American." And that's the way we, looked at it.
And did you have a best friend as a kid?
Oh yes, Linda Carpenter. She still exists. She lives in Sacramento, and we still get together.
What did you have in common?
I don't know. We both just liked having fun, and we'd study together, and we both played in the band. We both sang in the chorus. We both sang in the girls' chorus. So we did a lot of things together. We were both in GAA. So it was just, and we both worked at the Lakeport Theater.
Oh, okay.
So it was just, we just had a good time together.
And did you have any hobbies as a child?
No, but I was just very busy, just like anybody in Lake County. Go down to the lake, swim, play tennis. We did all sorts of things. We got together a lot. And we had, sports after school, lots of girls' track, girls' basketball. We were busy.
Did you have any pets?
We always had dogs. We never did not have a dog. And we went through lots.
Oh.
Yeah.
And what schools did you go to?
Clearlake Grammar School, Lakeport Grammar School, and Clearlake Union High.
And did you have a favorite subject in school?
History.
Did you have a favorite teacher?
Ooh, in grammar school? Wow, that's a tough one. Mrs. Davis, my kindergarten teacher, was really lovely. And Angie Brown scared us. I'm trying to think. Oh, Mr. McLeod, Mickey McLeod. That was my favorite. He was 6th grade.
Oh, okay.
He was fabulous.
And how has the world changed since you were young?
I had a pretty bucolic growing up period. I think now it's not that way anymore. Although I still feel Lake County is certainly a lovely place to grow up and be. Right now, politics and all sorts of things really kind of muddy the waters.
Oh, what do you mean?
Democrats and Republicans, not getting together. There's no work getting done in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. It's all just ground to a halt. And when I was a kid, it was Eisenhower and things like that we thought everything was fine. And we didn't know things. We didn't have 24-hour-a-day news and on, the TV on all the time. We were outside playing and visiting each other and doing kid stuff outside. Mm-hmm. There were no, phones, there were no computers. It was just a simpler way of life.
And did you have any goals or dreams for when you grew up?
I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Why?
I had read a book, and it was Leonard Cottrell's book, The Lost Worlds. And it was about people going into the jungle and finding sites and finding earlier cultures. And I was just mesmerized by that book. And I just happened to end up going into the jungle, finding lost cities and things like that. So it was great fun.
And did you go to college?
Yes.
Where'd you go and what was your major?
My major was anthropology. I started out at the University of California, Davis, and then we had a tragedy at home. My dad died, so I came home and worked, and then I started back at UC Extension, and then I got into Berkeley, and then from Berkeley I went to Sonoma State.
And do you remember any stories from college?
Well, yes, lots of crazy. Yeah, I loved Berkeley. That was where I was most at home, and it was just wild and crazy. And it was during the time of the student uprising, free speech movement, and I was there. I got tear gassed. I had to hide in the bushes once. Cop cars were screaming by. It was wild and crazy. People marched in your classroom. You know, and I was not active in any sort of thing like that. I just didn't have an opinion about that. You know, free speech made sense, but I wasn't marching. And so we just, you never knew what was going to happen day by day. It was truly an excitement. And I remember being sprayed by tear gas, and then the CS gas, the gas that makes you vomit. It didn't make me vomit, but there were people laying on benches really sick.
Whoa.
So it was quite an eye-opener for, you know, somebody coming from Lakeport and going to school at Berkeley.
Did you have a best friend in college?
Not really. And I think that was because I moved from school to school.
Did you have a favorite class?
It was always having to do with history, ancient history. That's what I really loved.
And what was your first job after college?
My first job, I worked in a chiropractic office.
Oh.
Dr. Stagg on Forbes Street. After I got married, that was my first job.
What was your first husband's name?
My first husband was Scott McLeod, and he was in the Army, and then we got divorced 3 years later, and then my second husband is Jim Carpenter, and we've been married for 54 years.
What other jobs have you had in your life?
I've worked for I've worked for several CRM, cultural resource management firms. I went back into the field. I started going into the field in 1982. And so I got a job with a company called Far Western that's in Davis. I've also worked for other CRM firms, but I usually stay fairly busy year-round.
So talk about working at the Lakeport Museum in the 70s and 80s.
Well, it was a hoot because we were coming out of that little tiny building that's now the law library, which was just jammed from floor to ceiling with items, cultural items, Pomo Indian baskets, Pomo Indian artifacts. We had lots of beautiful, beautiful things. And they were all just crushed into that little tiny room. There was no real storage, no real space. And so that's when, what was her name? Marion Goebel and her good friend, can't remember her name, the two of them got together and managed to save the courthouse building and turn it into a historic monument, and then decided to put the museum in there. So that was a really exciting time because we had to develop and come up with all new, because we didn't have exhibits in the little tiny museum. There was no space for an exhibit. You just put things out in glass cases. So now we had to actually come up with brand new exhibits in different rooms and in different places in the old museum.
What were some of the exhibits?
The one I thought that was the best was the history of Clear Lake, and I managed to get a NASA map from the outer space, a map of Clear Lake. And so we put that up on the wall. It was huge. And then we developed the history of the lake and how it developed and how it got to be its shape, and how old it is. I talked to Stanford. They were sure it was 500,000 years old, probably 1,000,000 years old, and now you hear even 2 million. But at that time, we were sure of 500,000, and they were pretty. They cored the lake bed, so they were pretty certain that it could be 1,000,000 years old. So that was an amazing phenomenon for, local people to think we have the oldest lake around.
Mm-hmm. Did you have school tours?
Yes,
How often?
Towards like right now, April, May, June, the end of the year, the third graders, fourth graders would come in and do a tour, and we always had like extra help that would take the people through the museum.
And how many staff members did you have?
Oh, it varied. Some people volunteered. We usually had at least 2, sometimes 3 other staff.
And who were the curators during your time?
Harriet Covey was the first curator. She went all the way back to the old little law library museum, and then she was in the beginning the museum curator of the Courthouse Museum, and then I took over from her, and then Linda took over from me. So. There were other people there that I don't know who were curators.
What was the biggest challenge about being curator?
Trying to get money to do anything. We were on a really thin budget, and here we are trying to develop, new exhibits, and it was really hard to get any cooperation or money, and we just tried our best. Like Jerry Hendricks made a huge metal holder for a Pomo Indian Thule boat, which we really needed, and we couldn't get anybody to help us. And Jerry just volunteered with his welding and made us a wonderful stand. So we depended on a lot of people to help us, not being paid.
Mm-hmm. And what was the best thing about being curator?
Oh, I think all the people coming in not knowing that much about the community and going through and saying, oh, I had no idea, all these beautiful baskets, I had no idea how old the lake was, that kind of thing. And tourists come in and really enjoyed it.
And you had a newsletter and took trips to other museums,
yes,
correct?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, we had a little newsletter that we would, take pictures and write up what was new, what was going on at the museum. If we had a speaker, we had a speaker series too, and people would come. Like we brought Greg White from Chico State, who is one of the most knowledgeable of all archaeologists for California. John Parker, the same thing, people that really knew the archaeology of the whole county. And we would have, for Greg White, we had to use the supervisor's chambers because there were so many people that came to see him. And we'd put him up, and then Karen Mackey would, for free, keep them in her house, her lovely bed and breakfast. And so we worked a deal out so if we had a speaker from out of town, they could stay there.
And what other museums did you visit?
We actually went to Mexico and visited little Mexican museums.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. Our first trip was to Merida in Mexico, which has beautiful small museums, and just went around and little information centers. We'd check those, and at different sites that we would go to, we would check all the information and just try to get ideas. Like Mexicans are fabulous as far as making up exhibits and using, like when they dug the new underground rail transit, they bumped into buildings, and instead of going through them, they backed off, completely excavated them, put all the information that they found, what they did. And so when you're in the underground in Mexico City, you're still learning about their history. And because they are incredibly proud and of their history, they do a magnificent job.
Hmm. And what's one of your best memories about working at the museum?
Oh, there were things like, Harry Lyons would come and sing songs and talk about the lake. There were things like that. Or people would come in and say, talk to you and talk about the history of their family, or how they were related, or they started coming up into Lake County in the 50s, or things like that. It was just always enjoyable talking to people, and also trying to come up with new ideas for new exhibits. And we did a bridal gown thing one year upstairs around Christmas time. And at Christmas time, it was really fun because we always had a big tree and it was lit, and people would come in and be in a festive spirit. So it was always lovely around Christmas time.
And talk about your memories of Henry Molden.
Oh, Henry, he was a total hoot, and I loved him, and he was so kind. In the beginning, all of Henry's notes were at his house. So if you were doing a study, which I did things on Pomo Indian baskets and stuff like that, you would go to his house. And he and his wife, she'd fix you a cup of tea or whatever. And Henry said, "You need any help? Do you need any help?" And I said, "No, I've got your notes." And I would spend afternoons there. And he had some of the most famous anthropologists' names from UC Berkeley sleeping on his floor that would come up and look at his notes and talk to him personally about where sites were and what he thought of them or whatever. So he was in a fabulous connection with the University of California, and such an amazing man, and knew so much about Lake County history.
And what was your favorite aspect of Lake County history?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow. Boy. I'm trying to think. I think that when you're young and you're living in a small community like that, the summers become very exciting because people would come up from the Bay Area and stuff. And we had a group of Australian speed skiers, and they were housed in Lakeport, and they would be on the lake every morning with these incredibly loud jet boats. And I met them, and they were just a lot of fun. And this one gal was a skier, and she was probably 90 pounds. And I said, "How fast are you going?" And she says, "When I come out of that chute and I make the corner, I'm going 90 miles an hour on one ski."
Whoa.
So I can always remember we'd run down to watch them because they were so exciting.
Mm-hmm. And what's your favorite thing about history in general?
In general, I'm always amazed that the history is, you could never make it up. I mean, it's so amazing what people do and what people have done, and hopefully we learn from it. So many times we don't learn, but hopefully we learn from history, and that makes it a better world for the next generation.
And what have you taken with you throughout your life from your experience at the museum?
Oh, I probably, when I go into museums, I compare, and then I look at, one thing I learned, you can't write big, long descriptions. No one's going to read them. So you have to be so careful with your words and get as much information into as few words as possible. So I always enjoy when I'm in other museums to see, how did they do it? What did they use? How are they displaying an item? That kind of thing you would pick up, especially if you go down to the De Young or the Asian Art Museum. You learn so much from what they're doing.
And name some of the countries you visited.
Oh, this could be embarrassing. I'll start with Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, France, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Turkey,
Wow.
Germany, and then flipping over to going south, Mexico, Guatemala, Salvador, Panama, going east, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia. I think that's most of them.
What do you love about traveling?
That's it. I love to travel. and see how people live, go to their museums, see their histories. I work in the Maya lowlands, and so I love all the Maya sites. And I go to archaeological sites. When I'm in Ireland, I love to go to archaeological sites. When I'm in Spain, I love to go to archaeological sites. So it's just really a fun way to travel.
And what are some upcoming projects that you're going to be working on?
We're going to be working on the old schoolhouse on East Finley Road. Foothill College is going ahead with a archaeological field school. We have 60 people on the list, and we're going to take 30. They will stay at the state park at Soda Bay, and they'll camp there for about 10 days. And the kids will come up from Foothill College after spending days down there studying in Foothill. Then they come up here, and we'll set up some excavations at the old schoolhouse and try to see if we can find something going on that. You know, we're going to be looking for the outhouses and where they played and where they, did things outside.
Mm-hmm. And how would you describe your personality?
Hopefully upbeat. I can't think of much else. I try to be happy and make everything, try to make things fun.
And how long have you been married?
54 years.
And what's your husband's name?
Jim.
Do you have any children?
No.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you meet your husband?
Years ago, when we were both in high school, he came over because he was the pitcher of the Kelseyville baseball team. And I was sitting next to a young guy named Corky Ewells, who has since passed on. And he said, "That's the guy for you." And I said, "Who is it?" He says, "Jim Carpenter." He says, "You're both goody two-shoes." I said, "Oh." That was the first time I heard his name. And then I didn't meet him until one summer I was home. And somehow we banged into each other. And he had a boat, and we wanted to boat. We wanted to ski. So I said, "I'll call Jim." And so I called Jim, and I said, "Can we go out in your boat?" And he said, "Yes." And that was it. We just started going out in the boat. We dated in a boat.
Neat. And what are some of your greatest accomplishments?
Shoot. I think some of the excavations that I've done, I've been very lucky. And I had an excavation at the site of Caracol, and it was totally accidental. We had excavated a gentleman out of a north-south trench, and he came with a few bowls and few plates, and we got him out, and we cleaned it all off. And I thought, well, that's that, we're done. And my workman came up and said, "Come here." And he had uncovered a bone going in the opposite direction, a big bone. And it was like, oh my God, we were coming up on Easter. So we were leaving the site for a week. So we had to cover it all up and act like we didn't know anything about it. Came back, opened it up, and it turned out to be a woman who was buried east-west. The man on top was north-south. She was buried east-west. And she was buried with 43 vessels, ceramic vessels. And they were just amazing. And she had whistles and beautiful obsidian blades. And she was laid face down with her little head turned. Around her ankles were, what we found out later, we didn't know at the time, they were teeth. And they had been drilled all the way through, and they were strung root to root, surface to surface, in a geometric pattern around both of her ankles. They were still there around her ankles. It was just an amazing phenomenon. And then as you moved up from the feet, she had a wapil, or blouse, a woven blouse, covered in mother of pearl, covered in bone beads, jade beads, spondylus beads, just this beautiful, magnificent 6,000 bead thing on her body. And what happened was she deflated through the centuries and, lost all body parts. and the beads stayed in place. So you could actually see these circles of mother of pearl still in place that she wore. And she had 33 fingers, digits, left in a little vessel. That's what the Maya would do in mourning. They would cut off like their little pinky mainly. But there were baby ones, there were old ones, there were, all ages. 33 people deposited a finger digit with her. And that shows you how utterly important she was, and probably an amazing woman. We have a lot of women, gorgeous women burials at the site of Caracol.
And what would you describe as the best day of your life?
Oh, Jesus. I won an award from the Society of California Archaeologists, and it was unanimous. Everybody voted, and everybody voted yes. It's called the Golden Shovel Award, and it was amazing. It was so much fun at the meetings, and everybody was there at the meetings, and they started chanting Mo, Mo, Mo. So that was really a lot of fun.
And what would you say are some of the greatest challenges you've faced in life?
Oh, they're all the time. I think after my dad died, it was really hard. And so I had to come back to Lakeport and work at Safeway. And I just wanted to go back to school. And even our doctor said, don't get stuck here. Don't get stuck here. Go back to school. So that was probably the worst year of my life.
And what's something in your life you didn't do and you regret it now?
Ooh, I'm trying not to. I'm trying to see everything I want to see and have absolutely no regrets, because I haven't regretted a single trip. So I work hard at not regretting. And so far I've done pretty well.
And what is something you wish you could have done in your life but you haven't done?
I wish I could have become a good horseback rider. I really admire people that can beautifully ride horses, and I'd like to do that. I tried when I was 60, but the horse bucked me off, and the woman in the x-ray said, stop it, go to golf.
Oh, no.
so I had to give it up.
Oh. What's the best advice you could give future generations?
Oh, geez. These are tough questions. Did you make these up all by yourself? Just try to have a good life. Try to have fun in your life. Don't get too serious. Just try to have a good time.
And what have I not asked you that you'd like others to know?
That's a good question. I think you've done an excellent job. I really can't think of anything, except I've had a wonderful time, working in Mesoamerica and working at different sites. I've had the pleasure of working at the most famous site of all, Palenque. Very few Americans ever get to work there. It's mostly, Mexicans only. And the young man that's with me right now, we both ended up through various other archaeologists and knowing various other archaeologists, got to work there and we will be working there in the future too, the most amazing, beautiful Maya site in Mesoamerica. And I'm really proud that I got to touch dirt there, because it was just amazing.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I'm just glad I'm here in Lake County and all settled in, and my sister lives next door to me, and you can't ask for anything better than the family still together, and we're still having a lot of fun. See, that's my point. Got to have fun.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today and for sharing your stories.
Well, thank you. You've been delightful. Here's my mom in Lake County, because she came up to meet my aunt. because my dad didn't have a mother or father living. So he brought her up to Lake County. So here she is, 1933 in Lake County. Here's my Uncle Lloyd, who later became Supervisor Lloyd Hamilton.
He was supervisor in Lake County?
Yeah.
Wow.
He put in the dam over at Highland Springs.
Oh, okay.
He and head of the Lake County Fair, Lewis.
Okay.
Phil Lewis. Phil Lewis and my uncle put in the dam.
Oh, wow.
So here he is. He's young there. He's a kid. Okay, so here's my mom. She's in Montana. She's in the movie The Big Trail. She drives a covered wagon. And then here they are. My mom drove one of these things, and it was John Wayne's first big movie called The Big Trail. And she was in Snowbound in Montana. And then this is the studio club where all the young girls who were not married, who were in Hollywood, could stay. And there was a house mother who watched out after them, which was probably heavily needed because they were all beautiful. Here's my dad trying to make a move on my mom, San Diego, 1933.
Is that your dad?
Yeah. And then here is my mom. This is my aunt, Zella Hamilton. This is my uncle, Pete Garcia, his wife, Frances, and then there's Uncle Lloyd, Lloyd Hamilton. And Mom was trained by this guy how to ride a horse. So she was a horsewoman. And here's Mom on Waikiki, 1936. There's one hotel there.
Oh.
At that time, nothing was there. But look at, this is Waikiki. And, you know, they made poles and a tarp to protect themselves from the sun. This is, and I can't remember what Native American tribe he belonged to, but he was a chief when they were filming in Wyoming and Montana. Anyway, he was a chief, and he went to the director, who was John Ford, and he said, "I'd like Mary, and I'll give you 27 horses for her."
Wow.
They were great pals, and so she really hit it off with the chief, and anyway, she was quite proud that he thought she was worth 27 horses. This is Bev Brown. His wife was Angie Brown, who had a reputation. She was a first grade teacher, Angie Brown. She had a butter paddle. It was a paddle with holes drilled into it.
Uh-oh.
And if you got off track, you got butter paddled. Anyway, he was head of the welfare department. So these are all local ladies. My dad's right back there. He ended up working in the welfare department. And this was Bev Brown's retirement party.
Okay.
Here we are in 6th grade. That's Linda Mallory, Kathy Hill, and Linda Lusk. Okay, here's kindergarten.
Oh, okay.
And
Which one's you?
I am right here,
Okay.
next to my pal, Linda Cuppinger.
Oh.
So that's Lainey Lamson, who's still in
That's
Lakeport.
adorable.
Ann Means, who's coming up this September for a reunion. Jerry Carden. Gina Hudson. I still see Gina. Can't remember her again. Linda Lusk, Barbara Strange, Ann Smith, Mr. Mills, John Ovington, Ross Jones, who was a policeman here for years,
Oh.
and Mike Sperling.
And what school was that?
Lakeport Elementary.
Okay.
You know, the old school, which is now a new park.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this is 2nd grade with Mrs. Steele. And the same thing, a lot of these people are the same. There I am, there's Ann Means, there's Sally Murphy, Kathy Hill, Sonia Barnett, Lainey Lamson, Laura Alamong, Carolyn, what was Carolyn's last name? Oh, she was a hoot. Vicki Goldberg, It was,
Wow,
anyway.
you remember all their names.
Lita Bakke, Linda Lusk, and Marilyn Bell. It was Carolyn and Marilyn Bell. They were the neatest gals. We just loved them. And then the guys, let's see, Doug Van from Dr. Van's, Ronnie Peterson, Jimmy Douglas, Tom Kesey, who became superintendent of Mendocino College. He was head of Mendocino College. Ross Jones again, policeman. Rob Harrell, who was a farmer in Finley. Kim Hansen. So that's about it.